You know, I want to say that if we're all connected, when we lose a part of the land, when we lose species, it's like losing an arm or a part of the body. I want us to think about the passenger pigeons who are gone and the buffalo who still remain, but are such a tiny fragment of what they once were. I want us to think for a minute of the nations, the indigenous nations, many of whom are gone, and also of the ones who are left, both hands. It is like losing a part of the body. And when indigenous people speak of the original instructions, which they often do, they talk about the fact that the instructions were that they were to care for the land, care for the streams and the water, care for the kin, the two-legged, the four-legged, the kin. And many of their stories talk about, your bear clan, your particular clan, because way back when there's the story of the woman who married a bear. That these are living relatives. When Karina Gold, who was one of the spokespersons for the local Ohlone people in this area, when she talked in that piece that I, found, she talks about how she's supposed to speak to the water. That one of the jobs, one of the things that you were supposed to do is before you drank water, you sang to it. You talked to it like a living relative. You understood that without the water, human life would not be possible. And she talks about how the salmon run traditionally started in lands that were the lands of her ancestors, and they went all the way up to Shasta, and that she and one of her relatives up in Shasta make prayer together for the salmon. But that this was a living responsibility. And we know about trauma, but think for a moment about the trauma when you've lost land, when you've lost species that you are dependent on. And when the words we say, oh, we're part of one body, they're not words. They're part of the mind, body, heart, and you grieve. And that grief is like the loss of a child, the loss of a parent, the loss of a beloved. As an African American, I know about the trauma of being the descendants of enslaved people. And all of us modern people know now, because we've been seeing the push to pull down Confederate monuments, to see plantations not as beautiful creations built by Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson didn't build Monticello. And in fact, he may not even have designed all. Skilled craftsmen builders of African descent who were enslaved, who could be killed with impunity, whose children, wives, kinfolk could be sold away. Karina talks about that the missions were plantations, beautiful on the outside, sight of horror, death, killing on the inside. And she talks about Mission Dolores which is part of the Yalamu, is the traditional word, San Francisco Bay Area. She talks about the enslavement of Native people. And one of the things that we ask is, what do you do with an unspeakable crime? And all of us, kinfolk, have kin who have endured the unspeakable. Those of us who are multiracial, Europe also slaughtered its indigenous. And up to today, the Sami people, or the living indigenous people of Europe, have hard times. It's said that when Chernobyl happened, the Scandinavian countries did not tell the Sami. And the Sami who live on their herds lost many of their herds, and the milk was polluted. So this is a long story. If you are from Cambodia, you know about the killing field. If you're of Africa, you know about the Middle Passage, the Ma'afa, the Great Disaster. We know the famines that ravaged China and the oppression of so many minorities that's continued to this day. As people of color, we do not, these stories are known to us. And they're not stories, they're in our bones. You know, the forced marches in the Philippines, the genocide that have swept through. But on this land, on this day, kinfolk, let's honor the resilience of the people who survived the unspeakable, who are learning their languages again. Karina says, we lived in Huchin since the beginning of time. We did not own land. We belonged. She says that we have to stop the selling of land. Land is not a commodity. It is not something for which we make a profit. We belong to land. She says, all of these things that the U.S. tries to do to squash us have not worked. It's failed. We still know who we are. We still know how to pray in our own way. We still know where our sacred sites are. And we still know how to bring back our language. She has been working for decades with other Ohlone people. Their sacred burial grounds, they're under 14th and Broadway. They're under sites in San Francisco that we pass every day. One of the largest cell mounds stood 60 feet high and was 360 feet in circumference, older than the pyramid. It's down where the East Bay Mall is, down in Emeryville. And every year, I don't know if this year, because of COVID, on Black Friday, which is one of the biggest profit-making days of the year, they do an informational ticket down by the Shell, the East, the Emery Shellville Mound. They've named the street Ohlone. They have a tiny little bit of a mound or something that was over 3,000 years old. So what is it when every year you have to endure this celebration of this fake myth? Either it celebrates a massacre or it celebrates a very, very convoluted history. You know, the Pilgrims didn't even invite the Indians to this feast. They had helped them survive the winter. And every folk has a harvest. There's something I saw on the internet where Indigenous people say, as Indigenous people, we know how to feast, and we feasted at harvest time. Enjoy your feast, but tell the truth about this day. So, here we are. The Indians came uninvited. Some say they were 90 people strong. And they came to remind the pilgrims that they were there. They had done a peace, treaty with them. They were having some fights with other tribes. Other tribes were taking advantage of trading with these Europeans, getting guns, getting metals, getting all kinds of things. And in the next 5 to 10 years, they slaughtered the son of the chief that was their ally and hung his body up and let it decompose over 2 years. Very, very convoluted story. And I wanted you to remember the song we just heard, that we come together. Black Elk talked about the sacred hoop, the hoop of all the nations, the red nation, the white nation, the black nation, the yellow nation, the brown nation. And we come together because we're all children of Creator. We're children of this earth. We need the water. We need the land. Everything we need comes from the earth. I didn't put it in the chat, but there's a very beautiful song newer song by Buffy St. Marie, who in her 70s is still singing and still on topic and on time, singing about the earth. Yeah. So, what do we do? What do we do in the face of injuries that are so deep we cannot imagine? Injuries that have gone on. We talk about people of African descent being here 400 plus years. And we talk about the injury to Native people that has gone on 500, 600 years. The wound too deep for healing. What do we do in the face of these injuries? One, we tell the truth. We learn the truth. Nobody came out of their mother's womb. I know this as a midwife, hating other people. Every one of us came out dependent. The first nourishment we took was to sip the air. The first nourishment out of our womb, because in the womb we do not breathe. We breathe the breath of this plant. That was our first nourishment, even before we drank the milk of the mother. Whether that was the milk of our mother's breast, or whether that was the milk of a cow. And we speak even today in English, that language. We speak of the milk of human kindness. So the second thing, we recognize that we are connected. What has happened didn't simply happen in the past. It echoed loud and loud and loud into today. It is in the celebration of this false myth. It is in our appropriation of the name. We take the name of Indian people and we just sort of forget, that they're not here. We ignore them. Massachusetts, in plain sight, they're here. And so many of the people that still here. The Ohlone are not a federally recognized tribe. They had an occupation about 5 years ago in Sogorea Cay up near Sacramento. And when in fact there came a time to negotiate a peace, because they're not a federally recognized tribe, they had to go through another to negotiate an easement. And then that easement was betrayed. So again, what do we do? We are willing to take a breath and see the truth and speak the truth, to share the truth. Sogorea Cay is actually buying back Ohlone land It has a couple of, I think a small bit of acreage with a group called Planting Justice. And it's committed to the reestablishment of the Ohlone ceremonial ways, teaching growing the herbs and the craft. It's singing the ceremonial song, building the first arbor for ceremony. And while I don't know that this is correct, connected to that particular effort, before COVID, up by the University of California, there was a restaurant that sold Ohlone foods made from the Ohlone diet. So I want to say we can support those who are supporting Indigenous people. And there's a Shumi land tax that the Goryate has established. And you can voluntarily pay. Oh, I just see in the chat. It's still there. Cafe Ohlone. Thank you. You can make a donation that goes to the effort to buying back land. And I think one of the nonprofits has made a pledge that when they pay off their land, that they have bought through donations and whatever, that they will give the Silveria that land. So acts of generosity, big acts or small acts, we can do that. We can support the people that are supporting the Indigenous. We can understand that when we take part in Indigenous action, we let them lead. At the Dakota pipeline struggle, this was not seen as a political protest. This was seen as an act of living through people to protect the waters within their Indigenous, their original instructions. They are water protectors. And especially women whose womb carry the waters of life. The first waters we swim in, the first waters we take are the waters of our mother's body. That may change, or our birth giver's body. But that's our first water. And so women in that culture have a special connection to the protected water. We learn about the land where we live. It's stolen land, but at least we can know the names of the people and something of their tradition. And we can make apology. I didn't put it in the chat because the brief version that I have seen doesn't seem, I wasn't able to find last night. But at Standing Rock, a group of veterans came and knelt before the Sioux and apologized for their actions. Apologized for the action taken by the U.S. Army against the Indigenous people. Every treaty that the U.S. had, it has broken. When the land, in fact, that the Dakota pipeline is to go through is unceded Sioux territory. They never gave it up. It was never taken. It is their land. And for the sake of profit, that's just being ignored. So we can stand with them. And when we stand with them, we follow their protocol. At the occupation of Sogorea-Te, Janella LaRose, who's the co-founder with Karina of the Sogorea-Te Land Trust, said, we ran it on Indigenous protocol. If the fire was sacred, it never went out. And no, you could not put your cigarette butt in the sacred fire. No, there were things you could not do. And if you did them, you were asked to leave. So we follow the protocols of the people we're standing with. They may not be ours, but we respect the rights of Indigenous people to decide what and how they do. So I've talked a lot. I want to ask you to think about your connection. You may be Indigenous. You may be multicultural Indigenous. I really love that Lila June also speaks in Spanish, because for some Indigenous people, first, they were the Spanish conquistadors who killed and murdered. You know, that the Americans came late, the Catholics, you know, so then the Europeans that were colonial. So that there are waves of colonization. And that Lila June in this, you know, many of us carry the blood of warring people who've warred for centuries. You know, I often think of this when I think of how, you know, people from Asia come here and suddenly they become Asian American. Korea, Japan, China have fought each other for centuries. They're here. They intermarry. Filipinos, I mean, we are, you know, I've started nowadays I put race in quotes. We are one human family. We have been loving each other and killing each other for centuries. And it's time to put down those childish, immature ways. It's time to take up the way of peace. It's time to be one of love. It's time to love in spite of, to find that way. So, Kim talk. What's in your heart and mind? What's been stirred in you? You can put some thoughts in the chat, but I also invite you. And again, mindful of stepping up and stepping back. You know, we're a moderately big group. You know, we're, I think, 26 people. So if you're going to speak, let's try and be a little brief. And I think this is a part where we won't be live, where we don't need to be recording a complex day. I want to dedicate the merit of all that has been raised to all the Indigenous people, North and South, especially Turtle Island and the lands of the South. May their people continue. May their ways be renewed and restored. May their languages be spoken again. And most importantly, may their land, access to their land, may their land again be land that hear their songs and their voices and the treads of their people's feet. May the land buyback of Sogat Riate be multiplied 1,000-fold. May we remember the territories of Alaska and Hawaii, which are indigenous lands, most lately stolen and taken and annexed to this country. May we stand in solidarity with justice, injustice, with compassion, so with all the struggle of Native people throughout the world. May it be so. Ashe. All our relations.